Good morning to you all. Welcome to this first keynote speech of the doctoral seminar, Peace and European Values as a Potential Model for Integration and Progress in a Global World. It is a great pleasure and honor to have here with us for this opening keynote speech the person who's really the main character in this seminar, whose name and topic was chosen by Sofia Corradi, Mam Erasmus, European Charles V Prize. We could say a lot of things about her curriculum and her life. Many of them are in the documents you have before you. She's very well known for having initiated and promoted the Erasmus program, which has changed, we would say, for 5 million students. The number increases with time. It has changed also the life of all Europeans, not just those 5 million students and their families, as the Director General said. Families went to that uncertain future and they went there to visit them, and the results are a proof of the success. Beside the million Erasmus children that are the fruit of that Erasmus program, is the greatest achievement of Sofia Corradi. She was even the European Charles V Prize, where the foundation tried to show that a person, a citizen in Europe with dynamics, with ideas, with grit, and with a lot of ideas, and I know her energy because I have seen her in many times. She succeeded in being heard about an idea that was to change the future of Europe and to make a great contribution, a pillar indeed, to consolidate this European project. Sofia, for us, for the foundation, it is an honor to have you here at your place, at your home. This is your home, and we are looking forward to listening to you. Thank you. You have the floor. Escribí algunas notas.
Two things which I feel like telling you before I begin to deal with my subject. One is my thanks to the foundation, to the European Foundation of Yuste, and to all the people working for the foundation. I was astonished to realize how few people were doing so many things, so much. They are just fantastic. Maybe they are a small team, but they work beautifully. If one were to look at all the things they realize, to the initiatives, to the results, one would think that they have unlimited financial resources, many people working. No, they are very few, but they work beautifully. I wish to thank all of them. I abstain from saying names because I want to make sure not to forget anybody. Thanks to all of you. really from my heart, because for me, a special thing is the idea of entitling to my name 10 scholarships. Just consider for a moment, a scholarship consists of a precise amount of money, of the possibility of doing something. But when you give it, you don't know what huge results a scholarship can have. To my heart, I must admit, I was given honors, money, interviews, television services. But I must say that what really touched my heart of an educator was the information, which I did not know before, that 10 scholarships would be entitled to my name. Allow me to say that in 10 or 20 years, if the people who are receiving the scholarships will think of me as I am thinking of the people who benefited me when I was 20, when I was looking for a job, when success was far away, that the world seemed to be organized very well without me, well, it is just, I would say, the greatest satisfaction and hope that an educator and anyone can be given. I don't want to make it too long. Let me just read the paper, which I measured so that it will not be too long. And it is not meant to be an exhaustive paper. How could one dare to say something exhaustive? But I simply touched some meaningful subjects just to encourage the seminar. The title is Erasmus and Erasmus Plus. We are here to start a seminar, and therefore I did not prepare an organized presentation. I simply drafted a list of relevant issues to introduce the subject so that there will be ample space for your reflections and contributions. I must say, I came here to learn. I'm not supposed to teach anyone. I want to learn. Let us begin with a few figures, very few figures. Most of you already know them. As you may know, since the launch of the Erasmus program in 1987, that was the official launch, the program has exchanged the 5 million plus the 1 million babies born from Erasmus marriages. This has already been said. One thing that is less known is that before, not after 1987, there was an ample pilot project which began 10 years earlier, in 1976, the famous year of the European Declaration of February 76. And this huge pilot project has produced more than 500 exchanges, as a pilot project was really huge. And the name was Joint Study Program, and its unit was exactly the same as an Erasmus project in the area of the program named Erasmus. The difficulties were really many, innumerable obstacles. It was a novel thing at the time, and the universities were not prepared mentally nor equipped to handle these projects. Furthermore, European legislation did not provide any legal ground. We were working at the limit of doing illegal things. At least there was no law that would give explicitly a legal basis. If you look at documents from the European Union, there is always the indication legal basis, etc. No, we didn't have any legal basis. One had to act without being able to find in the Rome Treaties any mention the name of the pilot project was JSP, which no one understood. Now everybody knows what Erasmus is, but JSP is an unknown formula, which was the initials of joint study programs, very anonymous. But it lasted for more than 10 years, and it was the pilot project of Erasmus. Here there is a list of the fields in which these projects were carried on. For the interpreters, go to the paragraph that begins with, despite the success of this ample pilot project, the early years of Erasmus were very slow. Just consider that to arrive at the 1 millionth students, which was celebrated in 2007, it took 20 years. Instead, now, 300,000 additional students are exchanged every year, which means that every 3 years, the total number of Erasmus students increases by 1 million. It took 20 years to reach the first million. Now it only takes 3 years to add an additional 1 million students. As we all know, from 2014, Erasmus Plus has broadened its scope to include other pre-existing European programs, to include more institutions and organizations of different kind, even to include managers, workers, etc. And now, several of its activities have no international boundaries, which is a fantastic thing, because in my initial idea, Erasmus has never been considered as a European thing. I always considered it as a universal thing. I hoped to have it supported not by the European Union, but by UNESCO, which is the cultural agency of the United Nations. But at that time, UNESCO was in a crisis. They didn't do much. They didn't have funds. Instead, the European Union was growing quite fast, and I was lucky that I succeeded to have the idea espoused by the European, not yet Union, but we went through several denominations. It was European Common Market, Economic, etc. Not only, but in 2014, despite the well-known global economic crisis, the program budget was increased by 45%. Sometime when I write 45%, people ask, you mean 4.5? No, it's not 4.5. It is 45%. It's an enormous amount of money, totaling then to approximately 15 billion euros, which is the approximate equivalent to $15 billion. I give this translation in dollars for people from other continents. We are lucky we have now here people from other continents. And it is almost unbelievable. Just consider also that this is alone the contribution from the European Union. But then Erasmus is even bigger because universities give support, other institutions, foundations, for instance, here. Well, the rent of this beautiful building, which we use for 3 days, should be included in a substantial budget of the Erasmus Plus program. And it would be, and the total would become really a huge amount of money. But usually with huge possibilities also go huge responsibilities. I think we all agree that we are morally responsible, really substantially responsible, to spend this huge amount of money in the best way, in the interest of the great human family. Intentionally, I adopt the largest expression I can find. I drop one paragraph because I have already said its content. And I go to the paragraph that begins, Erasmus has not been parachuted upon universities by a higher authority, neither Europe nor national states. One important thing to know is that Erasmus is not a top-down action. There had been in the past, mainly formal, top-down actions that was not really supposed to work. It is a good formula to put in a treaty or in an international agreement, yes, that we will support cultural exchanges, but with the hidden, accepted intention that no one will do anything in that field. No, Erasmus was not parachuted from top. Erasmus was born as, and has continued to be, a bottom-up action. And usually bottom-up actions work better because they raise from a need. Instead, top-down actions are initiated by somebody who does not suffer for a need. By the way, I use the expression universities in the sense of higher education institution, because many higher education institutions actively participating to Erasmus are not, in a strict sense, universities. I have a personal milestone in my personal campaign for what would be called Erasmus. I had two objectives, I would say two missions. Promotion of peace and democratization of higher education. You know, I think that here I am the only person, due to my anagraphical age, that really knows what a war is. You know, a war is not listening to a television journal saying that there have been 100 people dead in a faraway country, or that there has been a bombing who has killed 50 people somewhere else. No, this is the idea. Younger people, including all of you, including the professors, they are all younger than me. No, my idea of a war is a very direct one. I was lucky in a sense because I didn't have anybody in my family dying during the war. But at the time of World War II, I was 8 years old. I was a child. But the first thing you learn at wartime is that an 8-year-old child is already supposed to work for the only scope that remains, that is survival. When I was 8 years old, I was doing the same things adults were doing to survive. I was living in the country, you know, most family had sent children in the country. And we would wake up in the morning without knowing what would happen to us on that day. Well, this is what war is. And the people who remember this are of my age, and in a few years, there will be none of them, because I was 8 years old, but those who were fighting were 20 or 25 years. Therefore, they are not living any longer. My other purpose was democratization of higher education. It doesn't need to explain very much that higher education is a privilege. It has always been a privilege. Anyone who has succeeded to enter in any university is already a privileged person, because most people do not arrive to register in the first year of a university. It is a really small percentage, something around the 3%. And it is not necessary to give long explications to show that it is really not possible that 97% of the people in any nation do not have the sufficient intelligence to go to a university. On the other side, in history, we have always seen that wealthy families would send their young, usually young men, to have an experience of life and study abroad. Only it was not called Erasmus, but Julius Caesar, who was from a very wealthy family, he went on Erasmus in Rodi. At the end of the 18th century, the Grand Tour was an experience of 1 or 2 years of a trip through Europe and its universities. And we all know that Wolfgang Goethe did this. And what did the young people from non-wealthy families? They would try to find a job as precettore, officially as teacher of the young noblemen traveling around. In fact, he was like a servant, a waiter, the one who would take care of everything material. Otherwise, he would have remained in his little town and not have seen the world. I have a milestone, a personal milestone. That is, when I began to campaign, to lobby for these exchanges with recognition of credits, I used to send press releases to the press, but normally they wouldn't take care of me, they wouldn't publish anything. But there was a meeting in Pisa, and I think that the journalist who was on duty on that afternoon in ANSA, which is the main Italian news agency, he understood how explosive this idea was. What do you mean? You take the students of one nation, you send them abroad. Of course, they will only amuse themselves. This was a fundamental criticism. And when they come back, you consider their foreign credits as part of the curriculum towards their degree. And so he gave evidence to that press release, and it was published practically without any change. What they do, they change the beginning and they change the end and the signature of the journalist at the end, but they publish the very same text. The history of Erasmus is intermingled, intertwined with the development of Europe. Just consider that since in the treaties of Rome, education was not considered a matter of community interest or community competence, the Council of Ministers of Education simply did not exist. So, when after a few years we succeeded in suggesting the idea, and finally it was accepted, that, well, it might be useful if the ministers of education of the 6 countries would have meetings together, because they certainly had something interesting to tell each other. Well, what will the meeting be called? Will it be an official meeting, a banquet, or what? So those who study the legal aspects of European integration, I suggest that they deepen this point. Europe had, for many years, until after the launch of Erasmus, till the Treaty of Maastricht, a meeting of ministers of education that were legally inexistent. They went to the meeting, they decided what they want to approve, and of course they had to be unanimous, because the minority or otherwise would have objected. No, this is not a legal meeting, therefore you cannot decide anything. Well, this almost illegal way of proceeding lasted until the Treaty of Maastricht. I want to draw your attention on the fact that Erasmus is not a program of studies. It is a program for an experience of full immersion in a different culture. And this experience is done in the appropriate surrounding, because universities, after all, are not so different from one another. There are the students, there are the professors, there are the bulletin boards, there are examinations, there are cafeterias, dormitories, you know, they reproduce the same scheme. And of course, the students amuse themselves very much. But I did that also when I have been on scholarships. But maybe when you are amused and interested, the study produces more. What you can learn in 1 hour of study when you are happy is much more than what you can learn in 1 day of study when you are disappointed and lacking enthusiasm. The conclusion is that this experience, if you know anyone who is a monk, a religious monk, ask him to explain to you what an experience is. They know it much better than I do, because in an experience, what you learn is very different from learning from the verbal words of a professor speaking or from the words of a written book. In an experience, you learn directly from a reality without passing through logical categories. This makes a great difference, because what you have learned from the words, either spoken or written, produces only your spoken words. Instead, what you learn from an experience produces a behavior, which makes a great difference. We don't need to have many Europeans who will be able to quote the best authors in the field of the production of coexistence, or on how beautiful it is to have a dialogue. It is easy to teach that. You just you read from page so and so. What you don't understand, I will explain it to you, and they will be able to go in front of a professor, tell him everything, and then they will continue to behave in a non-dialogic way. So Erasmus is an experience. Let's go. The interpreters have my text. And if you go to page 10, to the paragraph beginning with the dissemination of information. The dissemination of information for prospective applicants of Erasmus Plus is very well handled by offices in charge of the staff. Each university has a staff which is paid for doing this. But there is information available on the web. When Erasmus began, one had to rely on information printed on paper. I remember carrying huge weight of papers because when going to international meetings, one would grab as many papers as possible, take them home in your suitcase. Now, information is available. But I have a few suggestions. You know, person-to-person information has a special value. The main communication in the age of internet is still the direct communication between people, in this case, between students or between professors or between people organizing these exchanges. Now we are going to get in touch with other continents. You probably have people in other continents who might be interested in entering into this world of exchanges. But we have to face a reality. Filling European forms is difficult. It must be done by somebody who knows English very well, and also who is able to understand the general expressions used in community documents, because they are directed to different cultures, therefore they are in general terms, and this makes them difficult to understand. May I suggest that if you are asked, how will I enter into this mechanism? My best idea is just be humble. Join any project that is somehow interesting to you. It is like running to ride on a bicycle. A book that would hope to be able to describe and teach how to ride on a bicycle with the words of a book, you can imagine easily, would not produce any result. But if you become friends with the people who take promenades and everybody's riding a bicycle, after a few months you will know also, therefore. My best suggestion, which I ask you to pass to your non-informed friends, because Europeans by now know everything, just tell them, write to any of your colleagues in a European country. By now, in Europe, anyone who is working in a university as a professor or in other capacity knows how to participate. Tell him, I don't have a project. I just want to join as a partner in somebody else's project. And until now, it has worked. I've suggested this. I don't want to take more of your time. I will be here for the 3 days to listen to you, and we will have a chance to speak, to chat, and therefore, thank you for everything. Thank you for your attention, and I would like to have your contributions. Thank you. Yeah.
Muchísimas.
Thank you very much, Sofia, for sharing with all of us this personal experience of yours with regard to the creation and building of the Erasmus program. It has been filled with obstacles that you were able to overcome very well. Thank you also for sharing with us what the vision of Erasmus is for the youth of Europe and the citizens of Europe is an added value for all of our lives. And I say all of our lives because many of us are sons and daughters of those experiences. Thank you also for sharing with us this moment. I think that it is a great opportunity to have Sofia among us today. We'll be able, hopefully, to answer some of her questions. There is one of our students who is doing a PhD on her, among others, so we should not miss this chance. Before we have a coffee break, you have the opportunity to ask her questions. Do not ask questions. Do not say ask questions. It's better to have a dialogue, contribution, so that she can keep on developing the Erasmus program. Somebody has a question? Enrique, introduce yourselves before you talk, and then you ask your question or your intervention. My name is Enrique Hernandez. My contribution is really a question because I had one doubt with regard to the increased budget. Do you know how much it has increased?
Del 45%.
The increase of 45% the budget in 2014. There was an increase of 45% in the budget of the Erasmus program in 2014. Is that part of the transition from Erasmus to Erasmus Plus? Does that increase affect to the whole of Erasmus Plus or Erasmus Plus education? My question is because with regard to my research together with young organizations, we usually have Erasmus, Erasmus Plus Youth. Everything went from, so everything was a general global increase.
There will be some part of it that has a higher percentage. This I simply do not know. But the 45% is for the general project, including those parts of the project that had different names before, because Erasmus Plus absorbs also other programs that had different names. Anyway, there is money for everybody. I really urge you, just apply.
Gracias. Lo preguntaba precisamente por eso.
Thank you. That was precisely my questions, because when you add some programs, some civil organization, there was some critics because for some organization there was less money. But it's interesting that did not translate into economic terms.
Yes. You know, when you want to do a research work or an initiative, the main thing is to do it. Then the label is not so important. Just let me read to you what can be funded under Erasmus+. And this will give you an idea that you practically can do anything you want to do. Let me see. Here I just give 3 examples of initiatives that are open to the whole world. But the Erasmus Plus guide is 100 pages long, and it needs a very accurate work of exegesis, because like any legal text, is the result of negotiations And look, in the Erasmus Plus guide, there is not any place where it says this program is open to the whole world. At least I didn't find any. But you find some sentences that denounce their origin, their historical origin, because the whole sentence had originally been built to say this action is reserved to European Union countries. Then somebody said, well, but why only to European Union countries? We cannot say that. In some cases, it should be possible to open it also to non-European countries. And then you find there is, as a result, a sentence that sounds something like, this action is reserved to countries belonging to the European Union or not. Or not means to the whole world. Therefore, please be ready to make an exegesis of this legal text. It requires time, it is annoying, but you find beautiful things. Just to give you an example of labels under which you can do practically whatever you wish, provided it is a good idea, provided it is well organized, provided it is really carried out, because the European Union is very severe, you know, they are not ready to fund any initiative who is not a serious thing. It concerns European voluntary service. This initiative, so named European Voluntary Services, permits young people, even if they don't have educational titles, they only need to be age 17-30 to express their personal commitment through unpaid, full-time, voluntary service for up to 12 months in another country, within or outside the European Union. What do you mean within or outside? Everywhere. Then, young volunteers are given the opportunity to contribute to the daily work of organizations dealing with, and here comes a list which I call an everything list. Youth information and policies, young people's personal and socio-educational development, civic engagement, social care, inclusion of disadvantaged people, environment, no formal education, computer competences and media literacy, and more, culture and creativity, development cooperation, etc. This is copied from the Erasmus Plus guide. Therefore, don't give up. Just work on an exegesis, and when you find something that fits you, just apply, and despite any label, you will succeed in doing what you want to do. I think this is maybe too frank, but I hope it answers your request.
Muchas gracias, Sofía. Tenemos otra pregunta por aquí.
Corradi, being
a question from
yes, please, if I may ask a question. Being an historian, I'd like to draw your attention back to the 1970s, when you developed the idea and gave it into the channels of discourse and communication in the institutions. it's been a tricky period in the 70s. The European Union wanted to develop common political approaches, common political concepts, but it was heavily attacked on the other side by, not the European Union, the European community in these days, but it was heavily attacked on the other side by the media, using words like Eurosclerosis and other things. It was well, I personally think it was an interesting period which actually succeeded in the end in consolidating many of the structures of the European Union, but that was not obvious in the mid-70s. So with regard to your plan, your concept, who had been your staunchest supporters in these days and who had been your fiercest opponents?
Oh, two very different categories.
I know.
Let me stand so that I can. I was persuaded of my idea and was trying to persuade the others. This is what one normally does. I usually ran into strong opposition by the bureaucrats. It was something, if they would receive some prize, if they would succeed in forbidding to me to do this, it was like a crime. Let me just give you the words they used. They told me, lady, just drop this idea balzana, this strange idea. A horse is balzano when he has one of the foot of a different color, and it is supposed to be a crazy horse, more or less. This idea will never succeed. Just drop it. But what do you think? That if an Italian student goes to Germany, he will run after blonde German girls, and he will not study. And I replied many times, but if an Italian student does not like to study, he can do this also in Italy. Does he like to abstain from studying? He can abstain from study, remaining in Italy and running after Italian brunette. No. This is impossible. They are different, you know. You cannot send an Italian student to pollute, contaminare, to pollute our national culture, going to study, say, in Paris. I never heard anyone in history saying that if you go to study in Paris, you pollute your national culture. These were the bureaucrats. And I did not have many instruments of opposition to persuade them. My main instrument was to write synthetic memorandums in Italian and English, and give it with my hands to anybody who was somehow interested in the field. Just consider. Once I was in the Italian Ministry of Education. If you have ever been there, you remember that it is a huge building with large corridors, very long, high ceiling, and I saw at the bottom of the corridor one director general I wanted to give one of my memorandums. So I was literally running after him, and when I don't see him, I go, look, he had hidden behind the column in order not to receive my memorandum. He had already received many, didn't want any other. This, the bureaucracy. Oh, one sentence. Madam, just drop this idea. This is impossible. It is illegal. Because we, of course, we would not object, but it is the Ministry of Education who objects. So I go to the Ministry of Education. Well, because they knew that they were wrong in making obstacles. Therefore, they were trying to deny their personal responsibility. It is not us in the Italian Ministry of Education, you know. It is the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Oh, which office? And I go to that office, and this answer is published in many of my books because they should be ashamed, you know. I didn't write the name of the person who said this because he must be dead by now, because he was a man in his 60s when I was 30 years old, therefore he is not there any longer. I insisted, and he said, Madam, not madam, young lady, there is a little detrimental evaluation in the addressing a lady, young lady. What do you mean? You know, this kind of expressions. He said, let me summarize for you the absolute rule. An Italian student must study in Italy. Study abroad is merely an inevitable evil we must accept when it is absolutely necessary. If a student has studied abroad because he has his family abroad, that is, if he is the son of a diplomat or of an emigrant, then we recognize his credits for study abroad. But if the student has gone abroad to study abroad, then we do not recognize his credits. This, the bureaucracy, the scholars, the higher they were ranking from a scientific point of view, the most rapid for me was to persuade them. I just want to give you two examples. One, Professor Villi. He had very good credentials for being considered a great scientist because he was the president of the Italian Institute for Nuclear Physics. Well, a good credential. Once I had some paper in my hand, and I seized the opportunity. You know, I am proposing this. He let me speak for 30 seconds, and he interrupted me. Oh, isn't that a good idea? He thought I wanted him to sign and say, where should I sign? In 30 seconds, that's a good idea, where should I sign? Another example, Professor Contini, ordinary professor, a baron, powerful, in the University of Florence, professor of Italian literature in the University of Florence. Only this gives you the rank of the person. Oh, by the way, in all of this story, I had very little money, you know. So I had convened a meeting of very high-ranking scholars because I said, if I can make them sign that these exchanges are a good thing, no one else will dare to object. This was, anyway, they tell me, young lady, this is a stupid idea. They cannot say that what has been signed by these very famous professors is a crazy idea. You know, I had asked to the rectors, please appoint a great scholar, but he must be one who is not fazioso, that is in one group against another. I need somebody of which everybody approves, everybody admires. One of the people who came was this Professor Gianfranco Contini. But I didn't have the money to pay the hotel for this group of some 10 people. Therefore, I had organized a meeting that was beginning at 11 a.m. and was supposed to end at 4 p.m. so that they would be able to take a train to go back to their cities. And I had made a mistake. I had done too much. I had already prepared the typewritten text that they would be supposed to sign. Can you imagine a very prestigious professor arriving to a meeting and finding already what he is supposed to sign, to declare auspices, etc.? And he gave a look to this paper and was the first to ask for the floor, saying, well, I've given a look to this paper, and it is certainly a very interesting thing, but it is a very important thing that needs mature consideration along, we should examine it with great calm, maybe more than one meeting. I'm sure you understand the academic language. This in academic language means no. And I was desperate because I didn't have the money for another meeting. So I went to sit behind him and told him, but Professor Contini, it was only me who wrote this piece of paper. Because I am doing this proposal because true that there can be in the curriculum of the students overlapping or lacune, gaps. Yeah. But all of this will be amply compensated by the enlargement of the cultural vision of the student. Professor Contini did not reply to me, not one word. He turned again toward his colleagues. He did not even ask to speak. He just continued as if it was what he was saying before, and said, well, of course, I agree that by and large, we can certainly agree on everything that's written here. I suggest that we examine it very rapidly, we approve it, and if the future experience will show that there is a need to modify this, we can very well do it later on, which means yes. You know, this professor had not replied one word. I had just told him these few sentences. And this was the usual reaction of any great scholar. One great scholar who accompanied me many times to visit ministers. You know, for instance, is there anybody here from, yes, the professor from a French university. I would like very much to be invited. I'm sure that your present president, who is very fond of Erasmus, will organize something big on October 13 and 14 when there will be Erasmus celebration closing the 30-year celebrations. French people do not know that they have important merits with Erasmus. They only think to President Mitterrand. Mitterrand was at the end, but they have great merits way back in 1969. I'm the only one who can tell this, and I would very much enjoy being invited to one of these meetings because I feel that historical merits are a very serious thing in the cultural field, and that historical merits should be recognized and honored. I can only hope that they will invite me, you know. But these were a few examples of their reactions. And of course, goes without saying that you made the best request one could imagine. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You have heard a little bell that has sounded 3 times. The time is over. Since Sofia is going to be here with us along these 3 days, you will have ample opportunities to talk to her and to research all that work that she carried out. But you should agree with me that it was impossible to stop her in her description of this idea that succeeded. And thank you for her energy and enthusiasm when she transmits all these things. Thank you, and big applause.